Jeffery Simmons, one of the most physically dominant interior defensive tackles in the NFL, recently sat down on a podcast and said something that no amount of hype, no amount of fan enthusiasm, and no amount of media spin could have manufactured. He talked about Shedeur Sanders. He talked about Cleveland. And what he described, without any apparent intention of building a legend, is exactly what the football world needed to hear from a man whose job was to make that young quarterback's life miserable on the field. This is not a story that originated from inside the Browns organization. This is not a story pushed by a fan account or fueled by regional loyalty. This is the opposition talking, a seasoned, battle-tested veteran who walked into Cleveland with the intention of rattling a rookie and walked out with a story worth telling publicly. Before we get into exactly what was said and why it matters, we need to establish who Jeffery Simmons actually is, because the source of information matters as much as the information itself. Simmons is not a role player. He is not a depth piece filling a roster spot somewhere on a practice squad. He is a legitimate, elite, difference-making defensive tackle who has spent years terrorizing NFL offensive lines while playing for the Tennessee Titans. Centers and guards across the league put in extra film sessions specifically because of him. Quarterbacks feel his presence on every single snap, even when he doesn't break through the line of scrimmage. He has played in the most hostile, deafening stadiums professional football has to offer: Philadelphia, Kansas City, Seattle, venues where crowd noise makes communication nearly impossible and where the pressure is constant and suffocating. Hostile environments are not new to Jeffery Simmons. They are just another Tuesday for a man operating at his level of the sport. So when Simmons sits down on a podcast and takes time out of that conversation to specifically discuss what he experienced in Cleveland, not as a complaint, not as an excuse, but as a genuine acknowledgement of something he clearly found memorable, every NFL fan, every coach, and every front office executive across the entire league should lean in and pay close attention. He is not a man prone to unnecessary commentary. He is not someone who builds up opponents for the sake of it. He earned the right to be heard through years of elite performance, and what he had to say carries the weight of that credibility directly behind it. Here is what actually happened on the field, and this is where the story becomes genuinely fascinating. During the game, Simmons did exactly what elite defensive tackles are paid to do. He got after the quarterback. He delivered a hard, physical, completely legal hit on Shedeur Sanders, the kind of aggressive contact that occurs on practically every single NFL Sunday across the entire league. Normal football. The kind of play that might earn a brief mention in a game recap if it gets mentioned at all. This was not a controversial hit. This was not a dirty play. This was Jeffery Simmons doing his job at the highest level of the sport, and there was absolutely nothing unusual about the football itself. What followed, however, was not normal. According to Simmons, what followed was not the usual ripple of crowd noise that comes with a big defensive play. It was not a moment of stadium tension that settles back into game atmosphere within 30 seconds and gets forgotten by the next drive. The stadium in Cleveland erupted in something far more sustained, far more personal, and far more emotionally intense than anything that single play should have generated on its own. The fans took that hit personally. And they made sure Jeffery Simmons knew it, not for a moment, not for a possession, but for the remainder of that game. Think carefully about what that actually means in practical terms. This is a seasoned NFL veteran. A man who has been in the league long enough to have seen and felt nearly everything this sport throws at a player. He has been booed in hostile stadiums. He has played through noise that makes sideline communication physically impossible. He has been on the opposite side of some of the most passionate fan bases in professional football. And yet he walked away from that Cleveland stadium feeling as though he had not just played against a football team, but had walked into something deeply personal, a city with a specific, intense, almost irrational emotional investment in protecting its quarterback. That does not happen everywhere. That is not something that exists in every stadium across the NFL. That is something specific to Shedeur Sanders and the relationship he has already built with the city of Cleveland, and Simmons confirmed it without any prompting whatsoever. Now here is where the story shifts from crowd atmosphere to something even more revealing about Shedeur Sanders as a player and as a competitor at the professional level. Simmons, being the veteran that he is, was doing what defensive players have done since the beginning of professional football. He was talking. Getting in Shedeur's ear. Trying to get inside his head. Attempting to use the mental side of the game to create even the smallest psychological edge on a young rookie who was still learning the speed and physicality of the NFL. That is not dirty play. That is not unsportsmanlike. That is just football, and Jeffery Simmons has been doing it at an elite level for years. Except Shedeur Sanders is apparently not interested in being rattled. Simmons described the specific moment when Sanders scored, and instead of jogging back to the sideline with his head down, instead of keeping quiet and acting as though it was simply another routine play, Shedeur walked directly over and fired right back. The celebration was pointed. The message was unmistakable. Simmons' own reaction, by his own account, was essentially, "Okay. It's on." From that moment forward, the game within the game intensified significantly. Simmons was nudging him, getting in his face, finding every opportunity to remind this rookie that he was on a professional football field against one of the best at his position in the business. And Shedeur Sanders kept answering. Every single time. Here is what that exchange tells you, and this cannot be faked, manufactured, or coached into a player. You cannot put a rookie quarterback in a film room and teach him to respond to Jeffery Simmons with that specific combination of composure and competitive fire. That is the internal wiring of a player. That either exists inside someone or it absolutely does not. That is the mental framework that separates the quarterbacks who eventually become significant from those who get worn down and fade. Based on everything Simmons described about that interaction, that wiring exists without question inside Shedeur Sanders. He was hit, he was talked at, he was pressured by one of the best in the league, and he responded by scoring and then delivering the message right back to the man who thought he could shake him. Let's zoom out from the individual matchup now, because what Simmons described carries serious strategic implications for every single defensive coordinator preparing to travel to Cleveland during the Shedeur Sanders era. When teams game plan for road games, they prepare for hostile crowd noise as a standard part of the process. They train communication systems, they work on silent counts, they mentally condition their players to handle the pressure of an unfriendly stadium. Every team in the NFL does this. It is a completely standard part of weekly preparation. But what Simmons described in Cleveland is something that no amount of standard preparation can fully address or neutralize. This is not simply a loud crowd responding to big plays in the normal rhythm of a football game. This is a fan base that has made the situation deeply, almost irrationally personal. The moment a visiting defender takes an aggressive shot at their quarterback, even a perfectly clean, completely legal football play, that defender is no longer just making a football play. He is declaring war on 50,000 people who have collectively decided that Shedeur Sanders belongs to them and that protecting him is a personal obligation. Every hit fuels the stadium. Every aggressive play cranks up the emotional intensity. Every attempt to physically or mentally intimidate the Cleveland quarterback makes the building louder and more emotionally charged than it was on the snap before. There is no ceiling on that response. There is no way to game plan around the emotional commitment of an entire city that has gone all in on a single player. The mathematics of that reality are genuinely brutal for visiting defenses. These teams need their players locked into assignments, cool, composed, and making sound football decisions under pressure. But they are attempting to do all of that inside a building where every negative play they make feels like it adds rocket fuel to the home side of the stadium and compounds the noise and the emotional pressure bearing down on every visiting player on the field. Cleveland has discovered one of the most significant home field advantages in the entire NFL, and it was built not through stadium renovations or artificial noise systems but through the organic connection between a city and its quarterback. For the Cleveland Browns front office, what Simmons confirmed represents both an extraordinary gift and a serious, ongoing responsibility that the organization must manage carefully. The gift is straightforward and obvious. Fan bases this emotionally connected to a single player are genuinely rare in professional sports. Season tickets move with urgency. Merchandise sells constantly. The stadium atmosphere becomes a measurable, real competitive advantage on the field. National media attention flows naturally toward a compelling story. Sponsors, television deals, and league-wide relevance all follow a franchise that has captured genuine public investment. For a franchise that spent decades searching for its identity and its place in the national conversation, having a player that fans feel this deeply connected to is the scenario that every front office in professional sports works toward but very few ever find. But the pressure that comes attached to that gift is equally real and cannot be understated. When a fan base commits this hard to a single player, the organization's decision-making becomes constrained in ways that are not always comfortable for a front office trying to build a complete football team. Any move that the fan base interprets as working against Shedeur Sanders, whether it involves a scheme question, a roster decision, a coaching staff structure, or contract negotiations, stops being a purely football decision and becomes something much larger. It becomes a statement about the organization's relationship with the city itself. The Browns now carry that weight whether they sought it or not. They are not simply developing a quarterback through the standard process of an NFL organization. They are the stewards of something that the people of Cleveland have invested in emotionally and publicly. How the organization manages that responsibility will define the franchise's direction for years to come. The final piece of this story is perhaps the most important one when you step back and look at the full picture clearly. Everything discussed here did not originate from a Browns fan account on social media. It did not come from a hype video designed to build the Cleveland brand, a biased local commentator with a regional agenda, or someone with a financial or personal stake in promoting Shedeur Sanders. It came directly from Jeffery Simmons, a man who walked into that stadium on game day specifically intending to knock this rookie down, to get inside his head, to make his NFL debut as physically and mentally difficult as possible. And he walked out of that stadium with a story he felt compelled to share with a public audience without being asked to do so. That is the definition of credible, unfiltered confirmation in the world of professional sports. That is what separates this story from fan enthusiasm or media cheerleading. Simmons did his job. He made his plays. He delivered his hits. He got in the face of a rookie quarterback the way elite veterans are supposed to do. And he still left Cleveland talking about the experience in a way that only added to what is clearly being built around Shedeur Sanders in that city. That does not happen in every stadium. That does not happen with most players at any level of the sport. That is Cleveland, 2025, and based on everything Jeffery Simmons just confirmed publicly, what this franchise and this quarterback are building together is as real as anything in the NFL right now. If this breakdown gave you a clearer picture of what is actually developing in Cleveland right now, make sure you hit that like button and subscribe to the channel so you never miss a single video, because this story is only going to keep getting bigger, and we will be here covering every chapter of it as it unfolds.